What it do, NMA crew? Amen. Listen, today I'm going to be doing a Patreon rant for Funky Boy Haas, where I talk about the album GNX by Kendrick Lamar and the halftime show that sort of accompanied it that he did earlier this year. So, full disclosure, I'm not great about talking about music, but, at the same time, who is? It's like one of the original art forms that was made to express emotion and not easily articulated thoughts through language. It's kind of just inherently a little bit difficult to talk about, especially if you don't have a background in that sort of thing or like a basic grasp on music theory or anything, which I very much do not. And that's even true when it comes to rap, which at least on a surface level seems to have a little bit more of an emphasis on the like wordplay, on the spoken elements, on the lyricism and all that stuff. It's still something that the nuances of are a little bit hard for me to describe, but I think that's pretty normal. I just like to disclaim that kind of thing because I'm usually a guy who talks about like anime and movies for the most part. But this was really good. I actually listened to it when it first came out, which is not the case for any of the other albums I think I've reviewed on here. And I was a pretty big fan of it. I really liked it. It inspired me to look at some more of Kendrick Lamar's stuff. It inspired me to watch the 4-hour-long Trixie halftime analysis of Kendrick Lamar. And I finally got an impression, because this was in a lot of ways my introduction to him, more or less. I definitely had heard some of his stuff before. But this is like me going to it on my own time. I was like, whoa, okay. No matter how I feel about this, which was largely positive, I can see that there is like a gulf, like a great depth of artistry here. Everybody always makes fun of people for overanalyzing Kendrick Lamar lyrics, but that's because there's stuff there to be there's stuff there to be analyzed. Not necessarily in the fact that it's always the intricacies of the wordplay being so unbelievably deep and multifaceted. It's more so just that like his songs are all very honest explanations of how he feels about himself and the world, and very broad concepts, oftentimes maybe like political, philosophical, or even very often explicitly religious. Like he talks about a lot of really big ideas that require a lot of clarification in a lot of depth, because that's just kind of what he's always thinking about. He's definitely seems like more of like a big picture, like grand plan kind of guy. Not to say that his lyricism isn't also like really, really great, but he sort of gives me that impression more than some other rappers I'll listen to, like Aesop Rock or like Danny Brown or something, who I really like both of. But Kendrick Lamar is... It's like I can't talk about this album without getting the elephant in the room out of the way, because I was just talking about how many people engage with his music from some people's perspective like over intellectually, but at the same time you gotta appreciate the brain rot element here, because this is where the infamous mustard meme spawned. Like when a video is like, it's like a young Sheldon clip where he's going to say mustard, and he's going to say mustard, and when it happens, Kendrick Lamar's face is going to show up and just absolutely nuke the video. It was a great meme. It's sort of ran its course. It was always supposed to be like a played out thing that like people are dragging, which makes them look like immature and kind of placing themselves at the butt of the joke. But also there's just such a wonderful element of absurdity to Kendrick Lamar's, like, the stupid fucking face he makes when he's staring into the camera. If you know, you know. TV Off's like a really good song. It's a really catchy song. The mustard thing was already building because it's like Kendrick Lamar was exposing his music to a bunch of people who had never heard it before, because he was releasing some of his most popular songs ever, and he kept mentioning mustard in them. It's like, who the fuck is mustard? Like, is this like his producer tag? People who don't understand, like, how producer tags work and stuff like that. It's probably like a weird thing to hear. It was just something that like sticks in people's minds. And then I think Kendrick actually, as a marketing thing, probably intentionally really embellished the way he said it, because he knew like the internet would like go crazy over it and like make memes and stuff like that. The memes just ended up being so much funnier than we could have ever imagined. And a lot of people don't think so. I get it. It's the the joke of it being played out and that making it funny is like played out by this point. So it's like it's going to be an increasingly small amount of people who are able to make it work by playing it out even past that point. But I don't know. It's been a very important part of my vocabulary for the last 6 months, even though I don't really use it anymore. But like there was a time there where I was probably saying mustard every hour for the better part of like 2 or 3 months. Yeah, I was a bit of an addict, but that's like the least intellectual way to engage with it. Obviously, it's tied to like fucking brain rot aesthetics and memes and shit like that. But it was kind of funny that he ended up crossing over into that territory because it's weird. He's like such an artiste, you know what I mean? Like he's a lot of his song, like the first song on this album, Whacked Out Murals, I believe chronologically came first. A lot of it is just about how genuine he is in the face of, you know, people being inherently unreliable and so oftentimes turning on him and not understanding his vision all the way through just because they can't see everything through his eyes and through his head. And just like being his own best friend and sticking with himself and his connection to a higher power and all that stuff. Basically just being like resistance to, I guess, peer pressure, to being driven by external validation and more so having that internal, almost spiritual, pretty much explicitly spiritual drive to create, right? So he's like not creating for anyone, but at the same time, his music has such a clearly wide appeal. Like so many people like it. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't like that he makes the stupid fucking funny voices. It's like when Eminem started getting really bad, and he was like doing all those like little skits in his videos where he was like, I'm not in the mirror, I'm inside. You know, like all that shit. Kind of reminds me of that a little bit. It's not quite as overdone, but like in Squabble Up, or like in Whacked Out Mirror, what's the one? There's one of those songs that where he's like, I'm tripping and I'm loving it. It sounds like he's talking like a freaking cartoon character, and he'll go like high voice and do all this stuff. I always found it like a little bit quirky and endearing, but I definitely know where people are coming from when they think it's like hella corny. I just don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. He's just having fun. It's definitely a weird little quirk though. That's the main thing I've heard. There's a lot of people who have been exposed to his stuff, and I've seen it on like worst songs ever lists, and it's just filled with like Kendrick Lamar and Doechii songs. Those lists are mostly made by like hardcore Drake fans and like just like really hardcore mainstreamists who can't handle like the slightest bit of fluctuation from the norm in their music. But also some people just don't like it. I mean, that'll never not be a valid thing. I think you have to respect the artistry of Kendrick Lamar and like his ethos and how much he, you know, cares about getting his message out there. You know, there's like a really big anti-consumerist tint to specifically TV Off and the halftime performance, which was sort of centered and building up to TV Off in specific. You know, like over sensationalizing, getting caught up on things that are not inherently fulfilling, being caught up in like petty squabbles and stuff like that. This is a lot of his albums are pretty explicitly spiritual, and he's just a very explicitly spiritual guy. But the point is that his music comes from a very raw, earnest place, and he puts a tremendous amount of effort into it, which is something that I always respect, because a lot of times I start to think about like the concept of like objectively good and bad media, and I just immediately read it off. I think it's stupid. I think there's no reason to try to make it a thing. I don't think it's a thing naturally. There's no sense of objectivity in art to any extent whatsoever, and we shouldn't be like looking for one. But at the same time, I think there's something to be said for, and it's art, so a lot of it is not something that can be explained, the message is in the medium, but there's undeniably something to be said for how much effort and how much intentionality somebody puts into something, because you can see two pictures and it's like, sure, the same amount of like raw information because it's two, you know, it's two pictures. Like every single data point on the picture is just one color or another. But like somebody could just like scribble and do a bunch of bullshit, but then like kind of make it like look like something. And then somebody could super intentionally, you know, paint out every little last piece and have it be perfectly anatomically accurate and all this stuff like that. And it's like, there's undeniably something to be said for the artistry of one of those. Like there's something to be said for the craftsmanship even if it doesn't always, I guess it's something that I haven't really nailed down in my head yet, because it doesn't always actually mean the art's going to be more meaningful or more impactful or more effective for whoever's consuming or viewing it, but it's just something that I think should be taken into account. Basically, that was all just a really roundabout way of saying I can tell Kendrick puts a lot of effort into his music. He's very passionate about his messaging, and that's something that I can really respect. As far as the Glazers go, let them glaze, man. Everybody's got Glazers. You know what I mean? Like, everybody who deserves Glazers got Glazers. I'm turning into a Junichi Sato glazer. You know, I've been known to be a bit of an Akiyuki Shinbo glazer. You know, I'll glaze all sorts of people who I think really deserve it. I'll glaze fucking crunchy bagels every once in a while, you know? And that's not just because we're dating. But, side note, Crunchy Bagels made a video where he fucking ranked everything he's ranted about on the second channel, and Ira asked him to rant about a few of my videos, and one of them he rated above the first studio System of a Down album, which is hilarious to me because that's like such a fucking god tier amazing album, and I just made like a little quick ass Umi Neko video in my basement. He rated it more, so that was really funny to me. But yeah, people will go into Kendrick Lamar songs and analyze every little last detail, and I think he knows that, and he knows his platform, and he knows the influence that he has, and he cares greatly about doing right by it, even though he's not necessarily trying to emphasize the most hardcore lyrical miracle shit. You know, like he's trying to more so send a message, a very spiritual message, which is interesting for me because I'm like the most like fedora tipping atheist ever. You know, religion kind of just sort of angers me more than anything. I usually just kind of start rolling my eyes when people start talking about it, to be completely honest. But with Kendrick Lamar, you see someone who's clearly got a good heart. He's clearly got a great head on his shoulders. He's extremely smart. He's extremely talented and all this stuff. And he credits almost all of his, or a lot of his success to his faith and to his close relationship with a creator. And it's a weird one. You know, it kind of makes me have to reevaluate some stuff because it's like, I mean, I guess I've always felt that there are people who can engage with the idea of like Christianity and I mean, I don't know if I'd even describe it as organized religion. I don't really know that much about his personal relationship with Christ. But there are definitely some people who are able to use that intelligently to like enhance their lives and whose belief actually steers them in the right direction. I've just also always seen so many people who get so caught up in the weeds and so influenced by it and start believing illogical things that make them act worse off than they would have had they not had it. But, you know, for a lot of people, it's emotional regulation. It's the need to, like, believe that somebody's got your back so that you have the confidence to keep on going. You know, it could be, there are a billion things that it could be for somebody, because it's just, like, an incredibly powerful thing that humans have been doing forever. But this is a very deeply religious album. Not specifically, I wouldn't say, for Kendrick Lamar standards, but that's always kind of been the main thing that I found the most interesting about him. Because I think it doesn't have to be Christian. Like, it can be applied to really any walk of life. It's just, I think with someone like him who has such an emphasis on, like, hope and guiding, like, these super large-scale movements of, like, humanity in the right direction through music and all this stuff, it kind of makes sense that he'd be, like, trying to work towards some, like, extremely grandiose goal. But that's sort of the interesting dichotomy of his music, is that it's also at the same time very personal. He will at times delve into more materialistic subject matter and talk about, you know, he just wants a GNX car. Like, that's the only thing he wants. That's the only thing he cares about. He just doesn't act above his more human mortal urges. I am being spam pinged on Discord so aggressively right now. Let me see who this punk bitch motherfucker is spamming me. Alright, I'm back. It was just some bullshit. I don't know. Yeah, he doesn't act like above his more mortal urges, you know. He got into a lot of hot water for featuring on his songs a couple of known domestic abusers, which brings up, a couple of interesting moral points where it's like he's sort of about, like, okay, you got to keep in mind, like, somebody this into Christ is going to be extremely heavy on, like, themes of forgiveness, of it not being too late, because he feels like so many people are basically, like, groomed into a violent or hedonistic lifestyle from when they're younger because of the media we consume and because of the society we're inside of and because of, systemic racism and all that stuff. He believes that, like, a lot of people are sort of forced into being worse than they have the potential to be. He likes to see the good in people, to see their potential to grow into better versions of himself. And in that sense, he's forgiving to what some people would describe as a fault. I don't know. I think it's pretty context dependent. I think it's a pretty nuanced conversation to have that I'd want to have with somebody else as opposed to just like sitting here spitballing on, because I haven't really thought about it as much as I should. But yeah, those would be my main thoughts about GNX. As far as the halftime show goes, I think I'm gonna do like a little bit at the end here where I think I'm going to make this video like 4 hours and 10 minutes of just like a GIF looping or something, so that like when people see it in the recommended, it looks like I was ranting about the halftime show for 4 hours and 10 minutes like Trixie did, because I think that'd just be funny because that's a meme. But at the end of the day, I thought it was a good halftime show. I mean, I don't really watch football these days anymore. I was kind of like a little bit annoyed by the outcome of the Super Bowl and the fact that the Chiefs are in it again. It's just like there has to be a dynasty every 10 years that just dominates and is present in every single Super Bowl and makes it all boring. I don't know. I don't like it. But yeah, the performance was pretty good. There were some pretty iconic moments. He wore the chain with the lowercase a on it because it's A minor, but he's also like little broing Drake because Drake's name is Aubrey, so he's got a lowercase a. Like, oh my gosh. Yeah, a lot of interesting stuff. He rapped on the X on the car like X did in the freestyle. It was like a tribute thing. I don't know. I mean, there was a lot going on there. Like a whole lot going on in the interview, which I think other people have covered in a lot more depth. The one thing that I will say is sorry, just give me about 3 hours and 52 minutes. Subscribe. Here's a little Easter egg. You sure skipped to a fortuitous part of the video. It's pretty good.